Hi guys. I thought today I would do a reading lesson. So I took a picture of your reading worksheet, and I thought we could go over your reading worksheet together because it can be a little bit hard. Summarizing is a harder skill. So we're going to work on summarizing today. So let me get into editing mode so that I can mark up the paper so that you guys can follow along with me. So here we go. See if I can. Perfect. Okay. So let's go ahead and do page 67 together first. And it says to read the directions and then complete the sentences. So let's talk about what is summarizing. So summarizing is retelling a story using the important events. So if I'm retelling the story of the Three Little Pigs, I'm not going to include maybe that the sky was sunny and there was clouds shaped like pillows. That's not an important detail. I would include though that there were three pigs and they made their houses out of three different things. So you want to include only the important details when you summarize something. So let's read this one together. Read the paragraph, then complete the sentences. Last week, Mr. Lester went back to the town where he grew up. It had been many years since he had been there. He found many supplies. The old school was gone. Mr. Lester had loved learning to read in that school. Mr. Lester found the house where he had lived. It looked almost the same as it had when he was young. The same trees were in the backyard. So let's look for the important events. So Mr. Lester went where? Well, let me find my text box. Okay, I'll move it. So where was the important place where Mr. Lester went? So most importantly, he went back to the town where he grew up. So that is the most important place that he went. Let me make this smaller so it can fit on the line more. There we go. So Mr. Lester went back to the town where he grew up. So you can see that information in this first paragraph right here. Mr. Lester went back to the town where he grew up. And he found many what? What does it say he found? He found many. If you look back into the paragraph, it says he found many surprises. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type down here, get my text box. Oh, come on. Up. I was not paying attention and I made way too many. You boys and girls, you can go ahead and laugh because that was kind of funny. Okay, so he found many surprises. Now, surprises is kind of a weird, there's already a period included, so I don't have to include one right here. So he found many surprises. So now we can scroll down and we can do the less important events. So let's see if I can fit more of this on. There. And I'll move this guy so that it's not in the way. Perfect. So Mr. Lester had not been to the town. Let's see. In many years since he had been there. So take a text box and we'll move it in many years. And you can move that. I guess you're writing yours in pencil, so you don't have to move anything. And then at school, Mr. Lester, what did he love to do? It said Mr. Lester had loved learning to read when he was in this school. So Mr. Lester, oh, come on. There we go. Had loved learning to read. And I know a lot of you are really good readers, so I hope you look back on your school experience and say that you loved learning to read. Behind Mr. Lester's old house were what? Behind Mr. Lester's yard were the same trees that he had grown up with. So let's see, we can type that in. Were the same trees as when he was young. So you might have a hard time seeing that. I'll try to move it a little bit so you can see it better. So the same trees as when he was young. So you can just write that there. Or you could just even write behind Mr. Lester's old house. Behind Mr. Lester's old house were trees. You could even just write trees. So let me erase this and I'll make it easier because that blank is not very long. So were trees. So you can see that we have the most important events are that Mr. Lester went back to the town where he grew up and he found many surprises. So if I were just going to say the most important details of the paragraph, that would be what I would say. Usually one of the most important events is that first sentence. So always look to the first sentence. The topic sentence is usually a good sentence to start your summary with. These less important events, he had not been to town in many years. He had loved to learn to read when he was at school, and behind Mr. Lester's old house were trees. So those are little details that you don't have to include when you do a summary. Now, this paragraph was mostly about, well, like I said, boys and girls, go back to that first paragraph and look to see. The paragraph is mostly about Mr. Lester going back to the town he grew up in. So last week, Mr. Lester went back to the town where he grew up. This paragraph is mostly about Mr. Lester going back to the town where he grew up. So that is kind of the main idea or the summary of the story. So if you need more time, you can go ahead and you can write that down. You can even pause the video so you have more time. And then we will go on to the back side. So the back side, I'm going to read you the paragraph, but I do want you to try to answer the questions on your own. Okay, so you can be a little independent on the back side. So let me cancel the changes on that. It takes a second. We hit done. And then we can go on. Let's see if we can go on to the next picture. Done. And here we go. So let's go on to the next page. And it says, read the paragraph, choose the best answer to each question, fill in the circle next to your choice. Boys and girls, before you ever answer questions about a paragraph, make sure you read the whole thing through. So let's go ahead and follow along as I read. It was a hot day and Molly and Glenn were working hard. They were helping get ready for a party to welcome a new family to the neighborhood. There was so much to do. Officer Foster would keep cars from parking on the street while the party was going on. Without cars, they could play games in the street safely. Glenn wanted to play kickball. Molly and Glenn helped set up the chairs that the grown-ups brought. They helped with the food too. There would be hot dogs, chips, and watermelon. Molly loved watermelon. So go ahead and I want you to try to answer the questions. The first question, which of these events is important enough to be in the summary? So you have to decide what is important to go in the summary. Now remember, the summary are those main events or the main details. Number 2, which of these events is not important enough to be in the summary? So you have to decide what's not super important and does not need to go in the summary. Number 3, which of these events should be put in the summary? And number 4, which of these events tells what the paragraph is mostly about? So I think you guys can do a good job on that. I hope you enjoy rereading Goodbye, Curtis. I think it's a nice little story. Kind of makes me a little sad to think about Curtis leaving his postman job, just like it's a little sad that I'm not going to be your teacher next year.